मैं
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Dear parents and guests, the National Department of Talim welcomes you to our career guidance series. Today we will be discussing the International Baccalaureate or the IB program. Today's session is going to be presented by a presenter who has a lot of knowledge and information about this, as well as a perspective from the student, and there'll be opportunities to have questions answered as well. However, before we begin this presentation and with more details to come, I'd like to invite Fras Chaudhry Sahib for tilawat and translation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والنازعات غرقا والناشطات نشطا والسابحات سبحا فالسابقات سبقا فالمدبرات أمرا. I shall now present the English translation of Surah An-Nazi'at, chapter 79, verses 1 to 6. I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed, in the name of Allah, the gracious, ever merciful. We cite in evidence those who pursue their efforts vigorously and strengthen their relationship with Allah, and proceed far afield with ease, and outstrip their rivals, and manage well the affair entrusted to them. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah, Fras Bhai. Again, to our beloved parents and guests who are joining us today, this is one of the first of many webinar series that will be organized by the National Department of Talim. Today, our topic is about the IB program, and really our purpose is to show the merits of this program, how students can benefit from this program, what will they learn, and what does this program means for students from a long-term career perspective as well. So, alhamdulillah, today we have a panelist with lots of expertise about this. We have Ayun Basharat Sahib, who is actually a teacher in the IB program. And then we'll have a presentation by Fras Chaudhry Sahib, who just did the tilawat, to share his insight being a student in this program as well. With no further ado, we will introduce our next speaker. Ayun Basharat Sahib is an international IB educator. He specializes in sciences and chemistry. Ayun Sahib has worked in the public school boards in Ottawa and the GTA, and in southwestern Ontario as a teacher and as an IB chemistry consultant. He has also taught in private IB schools in London and in Malaysia. He is part of the Humanity First International team in the Knowledge for Life program, specifically involved in teacher professional education development in educational emergencies. So right before Bisharat Sahib, before you begin, I would like to make just one small announcement that this is a recorded webinar. So all proceedings will be recorded and available for your use. If you have any questions during any time during the presenters or during the question answer session, we advise that if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a button for QA. You can use that to ask any questions. Those questions will be anonymous and will be only seen by us. And we will use our discretion to hopefully answer all those questions appropriately. So we will give this reminder again when we have the formal question and answer session as well. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Ayun Basharat Sahib to please take the stage and share with us your expertise.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Jazakallah Khizr Bhai. Thank you for the introduction. I'd like to again just thank Department of Talim for organizing this, such a wonderful event. And let's begin. Let me just want to double check. Can everyone see the presentation? Okay, so we're good to go. Okay. Again, you're invited here because of your interest in the IB Diploma program. It stands for IBDP. So let's get started. So initially, I just want to briefly give you a small update on my journey, personal journey into the IB Diploma program. So even though I graduated from high school in Ontario, I did not take the IB Diploma program. I didn't know of it then, and I wish I had. As soon as I graduated from my Bachelor's of Science and Education degree, and then I did a Master's of Education degree at Queen's University in Educational Assessment. I moved to work in England, and where I taught A-levels, and that was the first time I was doing A-levels, and I also got exposed to doing some of the IB programs as well, because there was one private school that offered it, and it was my brief dip in the pool, per se, in that program. But I didn't know too much, but I was just noticing and seeing how observing and getting my feet wet just a little bit. From there on, I was hired on by a school in Malaysia at a private school, private college. It was a Canadian college, and they offered the IB program in sync with the Ontario Canadian program. And with that program, they also, for that year and a half, they trained me as well. They sent me to training sessions, and usually they're held in like IB hubs. United States is an IB hub. China, Beijing is an IB hub. In Geneva is an IB hub, and then obviously Singapore is an IB hub in Southeast Asia. And also, I just want to double check before I continue on further. Can we do a test to see if the Q&A function is working? So would anyone like to just ask a mock question or write in the chat to see if it's working? Okay, it is working. Okay. So moving on from there, when I returned back to Canada, I was working at a school board in Southwestern Ontario, and I realized that this school had just began their journey in offering the IB Diploma program. And I noticed there that the school was not as equipped as it could have been with the IB. A lot of teachers didn't know some of the training that is involved in IB because of the pandemic. They couldn't go to trainings. So they briefly hired me to be a consultant at that school. Currently, I'm a chemistry teacher in Southwestern Ontario, which is not offering the IB anymore. And because it's such it's a small school board, so it doesn't have a lot of resources to offer it. So this mainly is a session for parents in which you are living in an area which offer the IB Diploma program. Okay. So what is this IB Diploma program, and how is it different to either the Ontario program or the Alberta program, whichever parts of Canada you're from? Usually the diploma program is found in that province. It is a 2-year program. So even though high school is 4 years, it is officially a 2-year program which students who are age 16 to 19 take at their higher end, either grade 11 and 12 a year. And this program was started in Geneva, and it's now recognized in 3,400 schools and in 150 countries around the world. So if you are unsure, because some school boards in Ontario do not offer the IB Diploma program, and now there's a huge push, especially in GTA, in Ottawa, in a little bit northern Ontario as well. They are beginning to offer many IB schools are beginning to take shape. Okay, if you want to find out which is an IB school near you, feel free. I'm going to share this slide with you. Actually, let me share it with right now in the chat. Okay, so you should be able to see it now, and you should be able to click on these links that are embedded in here. So you'll see find an IB school, you can click on it and figure out if there's an IB school actually near you. Okay. So why would you want to take the IB program if you already have a provincially funded program, education program in high school? What are the advantages and disadvantages of taking this program over high schools? So one of the main things I would say, having taught overseas and taught in Canadian schools and Ontario schools, I would say that there's a huge push for global citizenship within the IB diploma program. That means that you're not just taught the Eurocentric way of knowledge, but there is embedded international mindedness in that program where you're constantly looking at what is happening around the world. How is this applied within my specific research? The other aspect for the IB diploma program, which is a huge advantage for us as Ahmadi Muslims, and especially with the push that Hazur Anbar Ayatollah bin Nasr al-Aziz has given to research, is that the IB diploma takes research to a next level, which is not included in most high school programs. It is a program which focuses one specific section of IB diploma program is a huge independent research project, which students take on their own. And plus they have mentorship from by the teachers, and teachers are specifically trained to help the students scaffold that transition to research skills. The other important part of the IB diploma program is that university admissions, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, so you'll notice that this is like a wheel for the IB. It tells you how it's structured. So the IB diploma program has 3 core aspects, and then you have subject aspects, which are outside. So in this core, you'll see that it'll say theory of knowledge, extended essay, and then creativity, activity, and service. This is known as CAS. So in Ontario, we already have something very similar to CAS, which is community service hours. So all DP programs, diploma program students also have to do community service hours. Here, it's more advanced than just logging in and say, look, I've done my 40 hours. Here, you have to actually act and include what was your process of growth in that community service. The other aspect is that students take a short course. I think it's like a weekly course that they take. It's called Theory of Knowledge. They have a specific subject for it. And by the end of the program, by the end of that subject, they have to actually write an essay. The essay is about not just figuring out what knowledge is or memorizing knowledge, but thinking about how do we attain knowledge, like learning about learning. And that's a huge aspect which high schools in Ontario or in Alberta do not focus as much as they should. The other aspect, which is a huge aspect of diploma program, is this extended essay. Every IB student who wishes to graduate must, at the end of those 2 years, submit a 4,000 word research paper, which is like an original essay. It's almost like an undergraduate thesis that they have to write, which again is not present in the current high school curriculum. After this core, then they have to complete 6 of the courses, and these are subject which are outside. They have to take sciences. They have to take language acquisition. Language acquisition is a bit different than studies in language. Studies in language is from your mother tongue. So like, for example, English would be the general studies in language course. And then language acquisition is a second language that you have to commit to learning. And I think it's an advantage for us, especially from the Pakistani background, Urdu background. They have a language acquisition Urdu course as well, which you should, again, ask whether your schools offer that. But usually it's an online course that you can take as well. Then you have humanities and individual societies. You have math, you have arts. So those are 6 cores that you need to make sure you hit, or the subject courses. And that's your IB program. And again, notice the whole outside ring is around international mindedness. So IB doesn't just talk about Canada. It doesn't confine to the United States. It's an international curriculum which is embedded from all parts of, taken from all parts of the world. And knowing that what we've done as an educator in Ontario, I've seen that there are parts that they have taken from the Ontario curriculum as well, in terms of how they assess, what are their guidelines to progression for how the students learn. So there is an aspect which is taken from Ontario. Okay, so again, I've already talked about the core. These cores, you must, so the third part, the CAS is not worth any grades or anything, but the first two, the theory of knowledge essay and the extended essay, both of them combine to give you a score of 3. There's a combination usually. So if you get like a grade A, like a level A on theory of knowledge, and you get like even a level B on extended essay, you still get 3 out of 3. And it's a scale from 0 to 3. If you get 0, you cannot pass the diploma program. And it's very difficult to get a 0. The subject aspect, so I've already mentioned one of the things about the IB diploma program is that the teacher does not assess everything about that course. So a part of that is very different from Ontario, where I am from, where teachers set their own exams, teachers set their own assignments, like that in IB. IB is a written exam that happens at the end of those 2 years, or sometimes even at the end of 1 year, depending on which course you took. In addition to that written exam, there is an internal assessment, which is a coursework that students have to take in at least 4 or 5 subjects. So having been a science teacher having been a chemistry teacher at the IBDP, there's a chemistry IA, internal assessment, which is worth 20%. And this is where students spend 10 hours of just conducting an experiment. They change a variable. They basically conduct a research, but it's not as an extended essay. And again, that is a huge stressful aspect for especially students who are going into science. And it's worth 20% of their final mark. Each subject, these 6 core courses are graded from 1 to 7. 7 being the highest grade, 1 being the lowest grade. And these grades are actually standardized based on, it's a bell curve that they offer. So and it's weighted to averages. So I can tell you from last year, 8% of people got grade 7, or I think 10%, or 8 to 10%. 10 to, I think 10 to 15% got 6. 6 is a really good. 7 is like A+, 6 is A. All of the grades, the 6 courses are combined, so their score is combined, and overall you get a specific mark, which is if you got 7 on all of them, you get 42, which is amazing. It's like you're brilliant. To pass the diploma program, in order to get this diploma, you have to get a minimum of 24 points. And you have to successfully complete the extended essay and the TOK essay. All right, the highest grade that you can attain on an IB diploma program is 45. And I'll talk about where those 45 marks come from. Again, these are the 2 years. Again, you have group 1, which is languages and literature. This is your mother tongue. Language acquisition, which is group 2. Group 3 is humanities, society, individuals, and societies. Group 4 is the sciences. Group 5 is the maths. And then group 6 is the arts, but you can actually opt out to skip the arts, and you can take an additional course in the other groups. So group 1 through 5 have a higher importance. So let's don't want to take art, you can take another math, or you can take another science, which most people do. And usually that is a choice that they offer. And then obviously I've already talked about the DP core. Okay. Let's move on to the next slide. Okay. So the assessment. So this is like an assessment guide, and it tells you what aspects are assessed externally, which ones go to Geneva to get assessed, versus which one the school have a responsibility on doing, plus the teacher. So TOK assessed by IB. They sent a digital copy, they send it right off to Geneva. Then they do an extended essay, which is assessed by the IB. And then the CAS is assessed by the school. And then you'll notice that you have 6 courses right here, group 1, group 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Each of these, each subject, you have actually 2 types of subjects. You have an HL subject, which is called higher level, And then you have a standard level course. So for example, if you took math, you can take a standard level course, or you can take a higher level course. Higher level courses are more difficult, and they are usually courses that touch or even cover first year university, whereas SL courses are high school level courses. So basically what you're doing in the diploma program is you're exposing your child to university level courses, so at least 3 of them, and then they have to also additionally complete 3 SL. And that combination is up to you as the student. Sometimes you don't have that decision because of the school that you're going to, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Now, I think let's take a little break. Are there any questions at this point in time that people have? Or would anyone like to ask anything? We'll take a short 2-minute, like a break, to see how everyone's doing, and feel free to give me your thoughts in the chat. And then we can go from there. So again, we'll just take a 2-minute short break, and we'll just see if we can understand. Okay. So someone's asked me, what is a minimum grade point average needed for entrance into IB? So we'll talk about that entrance program, because every school has different entrance requirements. Someone's also asked, if a student takes IB in grade 11 and 12, and for example, get a 70% overall, while there's another student who didn't take IB and got an average of 90, who will get priority for university admissions? So IB doesn't have a percentage, it's a grade, versus like a high school has, and we'll talk about the high school grades and my personal idea. But I think that personally, IB has a higher weight because it's standardized value. Okay, so someone's also asked, what if there's no high school in your zone with IB, but you still want to enroll in one? That's a really good question. So first thing I would say is ask yourself, ask the school board that you're in, does the school board offer IB? And if they do, sometimes they have these incentives, which they will personally bring a bus to you to pick you up. That's how like sometimes the school boards take care of the IB students that much. Okay, I'll pause these questions and let's move on, and then we'll see if we have more questions, and then you can save all these questions for later as well. Okay. Okay, so reminder, we'll have question period at the end, but I just wanted to take some time out to just take a breather and see where we go on from here. Okay, so let's continue. Okay, so here are examples. This is an example of a student taking all of those 6 courses. So you might decide to take Japanese. So Japanese ab initio course, which is basically you've never been exposed to ab initio or Japanese, and it's the first time you're taking it. It's for beginners. And usually these courses you can do online. Okay, I don't know. And you have to ask your school boards whether they offer this. Then you have this student is obviously a Spanish student. So they've taken SL, standard level, language A. A is your mother tongue. Then they've also taken history, which is from your individual and societies. And then they've taken 2 of the sciences. So they've taken higher level biology, higher level physics, and then they've done math. So let's do a little double check. How many HL courses are required for IB? 3. How many SL courses are required for IB? So again, this meets that requirement. Okay, you have to do a combination of 3 and 3. You can't take 4 HL courses, then it'll be too burdensome. And you can't 2 HL courses, that will be too easy. So it's a very strict requirement on the number of courses you can take. Okay, here's another example. So you can tell this is a Punjabi student. How do I know that? Because they've taken Gujarati A. Gujarati A is language A. That means that's their primary mother tongue. They've also taken English B, which is a bit easier. English B is easier. If you're not as proficient, you can still take HL English B. Again, reminder, we'll do the questions at the end, so please save them. You can write them down in the question box, and we'll come to each and every one of those questions, inshallah. Okay, so those are examples of classes. Let's move on to advantages. So I've already talked about the brief idea of IB. Let's talk about the advantage. So one of the things I mentioned before, and I'm going to try to talk about this a little bit more in detail, is external validation. These grades or this diploma program is not like assessed by your high school. So there is a set criteria, and these are externally marked exams. So you can't just say, okay, well, my kid got a 95% in high school, because everyone knows high school grades are very much inflated. That's why from high school to high school, you cannot even compare them one-to-one. An example of this is that, University of Waterloo, like a couple years back, they have been recording averages for high school grade 12 students for the last 20 years. And they compared those high school students' averages to their first year averages, what they got in first year university. And they realized that there was a huge disconnect with what they had in high school and in university. And from that, they ranked some high school specific schools in Ontario on which ones are the worst for inflation, because there's no reliability in grades for high school. The other one is research and writing skills, especially with Hazur's focus on having students go into more research. This is the perfect setup. IB is a perfect setup to go into research. When I was a high school student, I had no idea of what research papers looked like. I didn't know what peer-reviewed articles looked like. And so this is like their chance to not only just get exposed to research articles, but for them to make their own, write their own. Someone once, I remember my IBP coordinator in Malaysia said to me that, a lot of parents say that this is a very tough requirement, research skills. And she said to me that the IB pushes you in a way that you become that person. It becomes easier as you dig right into it. It's not like, okay, well, I'm not this person, I can't do it. The IB guides you to become that person. It literally shapes you. Once you know that you have a very tight schedule, you don't have time for, messing around as you do in high schools. And the other aspect that someone asked me as well, just briefly in the questions, is the academic strength of the curriculum. Anyone who's taken IB, they have always at a higher advantage than anyone who's done high school, just normal high school. Even if you didn't do well in IB, the fact that you've taken it and you've gone through this very rigorous program for the last 2 years already puts you ahead. So even if you, let's say, you barely pass, even passing is a huge validation that you are successful. Okay, is a huge, even if you get a 24, I think it's much higher than even getting a 90% in high school. Okay, and it is internationally recognized. I'll talk about the international recognition as well in just a bit of a second. So the international recognition. So for example, I tutored an IB student. One of my IB students went to medical school last semester. She did her chemistry with me, and she directly got into medical school in UK. And her score was like around 37. So she didn't even get a 45. Not 45 is amazing, but her score was 37, and she got into medical school right away. In United Kingdom, you can get into medical school without doing MCAT, without doing those external interviews. I mean, you still have interviews, but they're not as rigorous as they are in Canada. Okay, and here's just a guideline. Like if you get a 39, you can get into Oxford, you can get into Cambridge. Just by that score tells you that, okay, you are at that standard. Again, it's such a huge, whereas you cannot say that with high school. Like if you get a 95, can you get into Harvard? I don't know, right? It doesn't, the marks are, let alone are by themselves mean nothing. Okay, whereas IB, the standard is so high that it has a huge merit. Okay, so here I've just prepared like a brief, like a comparison, a head-to-head. My province that I've taught is Ontario, so I'll briefly talk about it compared to that. The Ontario program is internally assessed. There's a lot of flexibility, and I'll talk about the flexibility. In the lockdown, we we didn't cover a lot of things, believe it or not. Okay, you probably know this already. Our principals would tell us, look, the kids are in lockdown, they're working online. You know what? You don't need to actually cover everything. Never did. Okay, so there's this huge flexibility. This is during the lockdown, but I can tell you that even before the lockdowns, you're not required to teach everything. You're not required to assess everything in the curriculum. There's a lot of flexibility. Okay, that's why there's such a disconnect between high schools and high schools. There's no set minimum expectation. Okay, the other huge aspect is the curriculum is only updated in Ontario like maybe even 20 years, every decade. Okay, and the reason why is that one of the reasons is because Ontario has a very strong union presence, and teachers do not want like a keep changing updated curriculum so that then they have to change their resources. Okay, and then the last thing I will talk about this a little bit more in detail in the next slide, but de-streamed classes. As you already know, last year the Ontario government announced that they would be de-streaming courses in grade 9 and 10. That means that instead of taking academic courses or applied courses, all the students are combined in one class. Okay, and one of the reasons I personally think is because of finances. It kind of lowers how many students they have to have per classrooms, but it's easier. I think they try to use that argument that, look, it's benefit for everybody because the lower students who are usually take applied can then their level can be raised as well. Whereas IBDP, the curriculum is set internationally. It's not made by Canada. It's not made by Ontario. It's no government oversight on it. It's an international body of like researchers and educators. It's recognized internationally. I've talked about that a little bit more. I've talked about it before. The other advantage for IBDP, and this is it's a big thing for some parents, but for your HL courses that you take, the 3 courses, if you get a 5 or above, that first year course you don't have to take. For example, if you take HL biology and you get a 5, you don't have to take that university course when you get to first year. So that one semester or that 1 year is saved. That one course is saved. Why? Because you've already the HL is like a first year university course, to be honest. So you save money there that way. The IB syllabus is updated every 7 years. So every 7 years is a cycle. Like it's going to change. It's going to get updated, especially with science. In Ontario, we're teaching science that is 14 years old versus IB. It's happening like the cycle is already going to change within the next year. The other thing, again, from my personal experience, is that when I was already an Ontario trained educator, but I had to go through external outside training to be an IB educator, and it took a lot of hard work. It was very hard. It was very stressful, especially when you know that you are 100% responsible for how well students do. I mean, there is they don't tell you that, look, these students did bad, but you have to get them to pass, and you have to get them not just to pass, to succeed, and you play a huge role in that. For example, I remember when I was in Malaysia, I used to come on Saturdays and Sundays for students who wanted to, like, it was getting their exam times, and I came in on Saturdays and Sundays to go through their lab, go through their exams, to make sure they were prepared as well as they could be. And again, it was crunch time. It was like university all over again for them. One advantage, like comparison to de-stream classes in IB schools, especially in Ontario, I know that for sure, that they have a set cohort for IB students. They are the cream of the cream students. They're separated from all the other students in high school. And let's say if you have a class of 25, all of those 25 students who are taking IB, you will remain with those students for the rest of those 4 years. And that, I think, is a huge advantage, especially as parents, when we know that high school is a very challenging environment, especially you don't know what type of friends they're making, but you can be sure that majority of those IB kids come from great households, professional households. Parents care about those students, parents care about their learning, and they're involved, and it's not like something you do on the side. So a majority of those facts are a huge aspect. Whereas I can tell you for now, the applied courses, which are now being combined with de-streamed, those students come from broken homes. They have a lot of issues. Obviously there's other things involved in high school. And I feel like the IB cohort kind of isolates them in that specific way. And the other huge advantage is private school education. It's almost like a private school education that you're getting via a publicly funded, right? I can tell you that private school that I taught at, the parents paid $30,000 Canadian dollars per year. We don't have to pay $30,000 for our kids to go to and take IBDP. Some schools, some school boards have a fee, and that they call it a registration fee, but it's actually just exam cost. For example, Toronto District School Board charges parents $1,500 per year. So grade 11 they charge $1,500, and then grade 12 they charge $1,500. I think York Region does $3,000. I'm not sure. They might have $2,000. They might have changed that. I'm not sure. The board where I am in, the students can go in for free. So the board takes the full cost for those exams. So again, you have to figure that out. Okay, so I said I was talking about de-streaming. So as you already know, there's this huge movement in the education sector for the last 10 years. It's been a big change, a lot of changes happening. And they kind of cover it under equity. They say that the curriculum is supposed to be for everyone. Everyone is welcome. And those ideas at surface sound amazing, but if you go deeper, you realize that they have this agenda. And one of those agendas is that all the students who are having trouble, who come from troubled families, they should have a chance of succeeding. And what they do is they put everybody together. They put all the students who have issues, all the students who come from great homes, and then they put them together. And I think, like, I'm teaching a grade 9 de-stream course right now. I can tell you it has its own challenges, because there's a group of students who are so intuitive, so engaging, and the other ones are disengaged and also disruptive. So they're combined, and having to navigate that is challenging for parents, but also very, very challenging for students. Okay. Currently, Ontario has de-streamed. Last year, they did de-streamed math, so in grade 9. This year, they have done de-streamed science in grade 9. And I think next year, they're going to do de-streamed English. So science, English, math, they're all going to be de-streamed. And I don't know what's going to happen for grade 10, but for grade 9, that's for sure that's what's going to happen. Whereas if you take IB, you're separated from this de-streamed. Okay. Okay, so I've already talked about this, the cohorts. My personal experience. So I had a wonderful time teaching IBDP. I would say it was very challenging for me, because there is an academic rigor that has to come from the teachers as well. I had to, recalibrate my knowledge from university to actually teach the level of courses, the level of the in depth that the course goes into, especially in terms of research. There is specific minimum number of labs that I need to conduct. It's not like my choice. Oh, maybe I want to do this lab. Maybe I want to do. No, there's actually a set criteria. So it's very stringent, and I have to record it. The learning environment, those students stick together for the rest of their IB year, and I'll say even abroad, even after their high school is done. The other thing I would say is I have also seen students have IB break them down. Literally, some of them have just had mental health issues to begin with, and I feel that is because they don't get that support from home, and so they get overstressed. They don't manage their time wisely, and then at the end they fall apart. And usually, some students like that have that option, that are going through those issues, they usually drop out at first year. They realize, you know what, it's way too tough. I'm going to drop out. And to be honest, people say, this is like a negative concept, but I think because IB pushes you to such high level of time management, that you have to have such a high level of time management. It's either you go through this experience now, or you're like first year university, if you're going to university, right? IB diploma program is for students who want to go into university, and not just do your undergrad, but go above that undergraduate level and go into research, go into professional degrees, go into med school, go into, And again, last one, the students that I've seen become super successful are the ones that have strong parental support. You're there for the child, especially in terms of mental health needs, but also like supporting like time management, your learning skills. And it's not like I've let you take the IB program. I'm paying for $3,000 for your IB. Okay, now you do your thing. Make us proud. It's a teamwork. And those are the students I've seen absolutely shine. So and get into like the most prestigious colleges, United States and overseas. Okay, so I'm going to finish my presentation off with talking about what steps that you can do as a parent. First thing is find out if there's an IB school near you. If there's no IB school near you, or even in your school board, then the next step is you can't take the IB, okay, unless you move. But someone asked me before, what if there's a school near you which doesn't offer IB? That's okay. School boards will bus you on sometimes, free of cost. I know the school board where I live, they do that, but again, they make special concessions for IB students, again, because they're the top, they're the cream of the crop. I think the other step is, you can't just force your child into going to IB because you want them to go into specific research. You have to talk to them, and it's a communication that you have to have constant back and forth to see, okay, look, I've done my research, what do you think? I would say the other aspect, which I didn't include here, is reach out to your school, your elementary school, and say, when are the open evenings or the open days for IB for my high school? Sometimes if you're not near a high there, ask the board. We are interested in the IB. Can I reach out to an IB coordinator? Every high school that offers IB has a specific role called an IB coordinator, which answers all those questions for parents. And also they're like the counselor for IB specifically. They know everything about the IB, the courses that you take. These are the questions that I think you should ask your IB coordinator when you reach out to them. If you call them, if you decide to take IB, you say, how much are the costs for exams? Sometimes they're free. Someone asked me, are there entrance exams? Yes and no. Sometimes schools are so desperate that they want more enrollment for IB. They don't have IB entrance exams. So you can get into IB right away. Some of them do. So that is specific on the location that you're in. And again, that person, IB coordinator, can be your best resource for finding that out. The other thing is I know for York Region, when I taught at York Region, there is a summer component to IB. That means you have to take that summer course, because there's not, like, those 2 years will not cover it. Like, you have to take a summer course. So there's a summer schedule as well. So that is very important to follow from your IB coordinator. The other thing is course selection. I shared with you that, you can choose all these courses and whatnot. The fact of the matter is that is from my perspective teaching at a private school. At a private school, you offer it, you want it, you get it, because I'm paying $30,000. In public school, it is not that easy. You have to actually shop around. I'll talk about what I mean by that. In the more information section, I've actually posted multiple links. For example, you can click on this TDSB link right here. Okay, this is, hopefully everyone can see this. Yeah, they can. Okay, so here is Toronto District School Board's information on IB. Okay, so if you go down again, they say this is how much they charge. Here they tell you the course offerings. Okay, every school so in Toronto, you have only 5 schools that offer the IB Diploma program, right? And here they tell you which school offers which courses. Okay, so they'll tell you in group 2, they offer French, which is standard level, and then all of the courses that they offer in standard level versus all the courses that they offer in higher level. So what do you know about this? For example, if I'm a chemist, if my child wants to go into chemistry and they see that, look, actually the chemistry is not their higher level, I can either make a choice that, look, I want to go to another school, let me go to Parkdale, or I'll just go to take SL chemistry and I'll be okay. That's okay as well. Again, you have to make that choice. You cannot, every school here in TDSB offers different courses. And again, the reason is because they are publicly funded. They don't have the resources to cater to every one of you. Okay. It's already at a discounted price that you're able to take this course. The other thing here is they talk about grade 9s and 10s. Again, I will tell you now, grade 9 and 10 doesn't matter. The best part of grade 9 and 10 is that you can be with your IB cohort. And if you're that parent that feels like, you know what, IB is not good for my child, but I want to take them to pre-IB, which is grade 9 and 10, do that by all means. That way the student is has a good bunch of, you know, academically focused classrooms. Plus, if you don't want to take it, you can drop out after grade 10. So you finish your grade 10, and then you can just do normal grade 11 and 12, which is also a huge benefit as well. Again, if you don't want to do IB, but you want your kids to have, I would say, the best environment, the best academically focused environment, right? Environment shapes you. So if you have IB kids taking science and you want your child to go to that, do that. And I've seen parents in, even MD parents do that in York region. Okay. So again, this is just an example of just a quick research that I did to find out in TDSB. I'm not even in TDSB, but you can figure out in your own respective board. Okay. So with that said, I think I'm done talking about this. That's from my teacher perspective. Again, it's going to vary from the next perspective, and I'm going to pause it there. Okay. How does that sound?
Jazakallah, Bisharat Saab, for that amazing presentation. I'm sure there's many questions that parents want to ask, so we will answer that as soon as we finish the next presentation. I would like to invite Frost Chaudhry Sahib, who is actually a graduate of the IB program and is now, from my understanding, doing health sciences at the university, at McMaster University. And he will be sharing his perspective as a student going through the IB process.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullah. So I think Ayun Bhai, he's done a wonderful job of, you know, covering most of the aspects surrounding the IB program. But I do have a few things that I want to, you know, add on to his presentation from a student perspective. So one thing I would like to mention is, you know, a lot of people think that IB is all about academics, right? It's basically a chance for the student to, you know, be exposed to more hardcore content that could prove useful in university, right? But the entire IB program it's much more than that, and it's more of a lifestyle, right? And I think Ayun Bhai touched on this, but there are numerous aspects to the IB diploma program. For example, the extended essay, or the various IAs that we have to do in the various courses. And IAs are basically like essays dedicated to each course. So all of these things, one of the main endpoints of that is to teach students an effective way to manage their time. And this is something which is super useful, not just in life, but whatever you're doing, if you're in university or you have a job or something, that's something that you can apply into any field, right? And that's something that IB really teaches you. And I think Ayun Bhai also touched upon the fact that the IB program, the cohorts that are taking IB, they are secluded and they develop a very communal bond with each other. And this also enhances the entire lifestyle aspect of the IB program. And also, like, some of the courses that we take are very novice and they're not provided to a typical high school student. And one of those courses, which I personally enjoyed a lot, was the TOK program, the Theory of Knowledge. And in this program, we take a step back and we explore, like what we are learning in our courses. How is that knowledge found and how can we trust that knowledge, right? So we're asking some bigger life questions. And this is something that has really helped me, because a lot of courses that we take in university, they have this sort of philosophy aspect to it. And that is something that I think the foundations were built in that TOK program. And again, it really helped me out in the entire university aspect. So one thing I would like to mention is when you are in the program and you see your regular grade 12 counterparts or grade 11 counterparts taking their academic or their de-streamed courses, you would think to yourself, this is what I'm doing. Is it really worth it? I'm putting in an extra effort. And the truth is that you would feel as if it's not worth it at that point. But trust me that as soon as you go into university, you will see that you have a huge advantage over students that have not taken IB. For example, I took chemistry higher level in my IB diploma program. And right now I'm taking chemistry in first year. And almost all the students that are in a science related program are also taking chemistry. And from what I have noticed, the students who have taken IB chemistry, they're not, having sleepless nights studying for their midterms or practicing for any of their tests, right? Because they have taken the chemistry program and they have those foundations, and the university program is more of just a review for the students, right? So in that sense, it makes the first year and the transition to university much more fluid because you already have that foundation. You already have the skill set built up. So it is much easier to transition from high school to university. One thing I wanted to mention is that there is something known as mark inflation in the IB program. So what this means is, say that you get a 75% in your chemistry exam, right? So when those marks come back here to the school board, they have their own adjustments that they make. So a 75% could be rounded up to a 90%, right? That's a 15% bump. And I think that's one of the key reasons why I personally joined the IB program, because that mark inflation, it really benefits a lot of students, right? Because though the program or the content is more difficult and we have a lot more things to do, that mark inflation can sometimes give you higher marks than you would achieve if you were taking a grade 12 course, right? Now, obviously, this is something that is varied according to your school board. So I know TDSP, for example, is not as lenient in their adjustments, but I went to Maple High School in York District, and they have a very lenient adjustment that they make to your marks. So like I mentioned, I got a 79% in my IB chemistry exam, and that got bumped up to approximately a 97, 98%. So that was a huge bump up for my marks. But in terms of the admission process to universities, and I know this is a key reason why a lot of students go into the IB program, because I think that there's an advantage of going into the IB program. But I would say that here in Canada, the only advantage that we get in the admission process is the inflation in the marks, which honestly is not hugely higher compared to a grade 12 course, but there is still that mark inflation. But the real advantages of IB come in when you actually enter university, because like I mentioned, it makes the entire process of getting used to university style assessments and the entire lifestyle much easier. So that is the key benefit of the IB program. So in the end, I just want to touch upon some of the negatives about the IB program. And one of the things that I found, or what I've heard from my IB friends that have gone to different schools, is the fact that there's a huge discrepancy between the quality of the IB program between each of the schools that it is offered at, right? So one school could be more developed than another IB school. And Yunpai was just showing a couple of schools in the TDSP region, and you could see that some of the schools have a higher or give you more options for your SL and HL courses, while other schools are much newer. And because of that, you don't get the entire IB experience. And the reason why I say that is because the teachers that are at the program, they have just done their training, and they are teaching for the first time. And because of that, their teaching may not be on par with one of the more experienced teachers. And because of that, you could struggle with some of your exams because the teachers, have just gotten their training and are not super adept at teaching the courses, right? And beyond that, the courses, for example, like I was forced to take French for my language acquisition, and I'm not really that good at French. I would have preferred something that I was more, adept at, for example, Urdu. But obviously, because my school did not offer that, I struggled in French and I had to take it. And because of that, my overall percentage did take a hit. But again, these are some offsets that, you could consider. And I don't think they detract from the IB experience overall, but it's just something that you have to keep in mind, that some schools are more mature than others, and you don't get the full package in all of the schools. The second, negative thing about the IB program is how our assessments are marked. So Yunpai mentioned that all of our assessments, or most of our assessments, are marked externally, right? And because of that, our marks can be very volatile because the examiners can be from anywhere in the globe, and the expectations of each of the examiner is very varied, right? So I could have a teacher marking my English essay in England, right? And I could have one marking it in, for example, China, right? So in the Chinese curriculum, their marking is much more rigorous, and it's just there's a lot more expectations, right? Compared to something some of the examiners in England or perhaps in the US. So because of that,
Assalamu alaikum, Firas bhai, Jazakallah. Sorry, we're just gonna cut you off there just because the interest of time, and I see that a lot of questions are being asked by the parents. So this time I'd like to invite Basharat Saab to also join the panel by turning his camera on. And what we'll do is that we'll go through some of these questions. So I think what we'll do now to maximize the amount of questions is that we'll keep the answers very short and very brief, and that way we can accommodate everybody. So we'll start off with the first question. What is the minimum grade point average needed for entrance into the IB program?
Again, I would say every school this is something you would need to check and ask the school that you're prospectively looking at, because some schools don't require anything. Ideally, you should have like A's in your grade 8.
Perfect. Next question is, what do you need to do to get a mark inflation?
Okay, I think Frost briefly talked about this. Mark inflation, I think this is specifically teacher specific. And if you're in it for the mark, then you shouldn't be taking IB. I would just finish at that.
Perfect. Next question is, this might be a little bit of a lengthy one, but if you can just briefly tell us what subjects are covered in the admission exam for IB.
Again, it's usually sciences and maths. That's what they're looking at.
Perfect.
And language, language, science, and math.
Perfect. This question, I think you already asked in your presentation, but it might be worthwhile to talk about it again. If there's no high school in your zone with IB, but you still want to enroll in one, what should be the next steps?
Talk to your board, school board, reach out to them and say, my child would like to take an IB course, and I see that there's one that is, let's say, like 30 kilometers away. Is there any supports for me?
Perfect. Next question is, what is the difference between an AP course and an IB course?
AP courses also offer university credits. They're not as many as IB. AP course you can take individually and you can get a credit for it. And IB is a whole like way of thinking, and it's some schools do offer AP. Yes, it's an American system, versus IB is a international system. AP is easier than IB, I can tell you that.
Okay, so I guess the summary is IP is more of an international standard, and AP is kind of a standalone, different standard, different philosophy.
AP is American, basically. American
Perfect,
system.
sounds good. This is an interesting question. Can you transfer into IB after grade 9?
That's a good question. Look, if you want it bad enough, I think you can do it. And trust me, that's something I would want to say as a parents. We can look. I would say there's so many other parents who are not from our community, who are timid, or who are much more assertive, and they get their own way. We, as from our community, we're not very assertive, and we let them do everything want. So I think if you are assertive and say, look, I want to take IB, we didn't take it in grade 9. Let's say we came from Calgary, we came from somewhere else where we didn't have it. If you push hard enough, you'll get there.
Perfect. I think there's one clarification that someone asked: is IB 2 years or 4 years?
It's 2 years. It starts in grade 11. It
Okay,
doesn't start in
perfect.
grade 9. It doesn't start in grade 10. That's why you're able to enter into it in grade 11. For schools that they say pre-IB, it's something made up. It doesn't exist. It's just
So really, grade 11 and 12.
grade
is
11
kind
and
of
12 is where they start. Yes.
perfect. Next question is, maybe this is a contrast between something else. Can you speak to French immersion and kind of its pros and cons in the context of our IB program?
French immersion is focused on French, and then everything else takes second precedence, right? So in IB, the science is in English, whereas French immersion, science is in French. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I'm right. But again, is there anybody who has taken French immersion? But I think it is, yeah. Whereas IB, the science has to be in English. There's a certain courses, whereas that's a bit different. I hope I answered that question. I'm sorry, I'm trying to rush. We want to just get to everybody, but yeah, it's a good
No
question.
worries. Okay, perfect. I'm just cycling through the questions. I think we covered many of them. There's a lot of repeats. Let's see. Somebody's asking, can you explain the point again, which you talked about the Urdu language? Maybe it's a clarification about the language component, if you can just speak
Okay.
to that.
My private school, if we didn't offer a language B course in school, that means we didn't have teachers to have, for example, Urdu or anything, then you can take a course which is called ab initio, AB initio. It's for a very basic course, which is very easy to get like a 7 in. Okay, this is kind of like not a cheat, I would say, but like a trick that you can do. You can ask your school, look, can I take this IB initial course? And then the schools have to kind of enroll you into it, and you can take it online. It's an online course. Again, this is board specific. Some boards don't offer that. They have no idea. My experience is in private schools as well. So private schools offer it. So again, you have to ask your coordinator, do you offer ab initio courses that we can take online?
Perfect. Can you speak to the benefits of IB in the context of STEM?
It's 100% STEM. They talk about STEM in Ontario, which they're far behind. Like I said, the curriculum is 14 years old. STEM in true STEM is they engineer their own their projects. And Firas probably knows. Firas knows how long he probably stayed up night doing those STEM IA projects. It's 100% STEM. Good question.
Jazakallah. Here's a question. It's a scenario. If a student takes IB in grade 11 and 12, and for example, gets a 70% overall, while there's another student who didn't take IB and got an average of 90. So who will get priority for admission?
I've said this before. Percentages are hardly the factor that allow you to enter into university nowadays. If you get a 70, usually it's not a 70 in IB. It's like it's a mark out of 45. And I know Firas talked about grade inflation. All those are just for teachers to make more sense out of those numbers. But you can individually apply with the lowest. Think about it this way: the lowest number you can get to pass IB is higher than 80%. So that in itself it shows that the standard is so much higher. You don't worry. You don't take IB to worry about marks. That's the kind of the goal that I've said. If you want your child to succeed in university, you don't. If you are telling them, you want to get highest marks, then you're not in it. It has to be based on success criteria. Have you met that goal? Have you met this research task? Have you time managed? Do you know how to regulate yourself? You rarely talk about grades. It's a very lower level of thinking.
Exactly. So it's really building that mentality and that philosophy as opposed to that goal-directed grade mentality.
Yeah.
Interesting. We have so I think we kind of went through a lot of the IB specific questions. There's maybe some global questions on the context of education. What is the average admission average of university in Canada? I know that's a loaded question. It's probably different per program, per university. But if you could speak to that in general.
So I know Faraz didn't share his degree. Faraz, आपने तो बताया नहीं कि आपने कौन से which degree are you in? He's in, I think, health sciences, right, Faraz? Is that correct?
Ji.
And so health sciences is one of the top courses, and I think that just to get into it is like 95%, correct?
More like 92%, but
92,
around
sorry.
there, yeah.
Yeah, 92%. Yeah. So, it's a very high level course, high level program. So, it depends, it's a loaded question.
Yeah, so I think just to add to that, there's a lot of variability. You just have to look into the different programs and see for yourself.
Different programs, exactly. Most, I know in Ontario, if you have an 80, you can get into it. And again, if you are asking about your child getting admitted to a program rather than them graduating the program, you're asking the wrong questions. Okay, so think about what I mean by that. I'll share with my first experience. When I went to university, it was a shock because of the level of difference between high school and university. So you have to actually raise it to the next level. It's not about getting into university. It's about what you do during university and after, right? I had talked about how IB is not meant for just doing your undergrad and then you find a job. This is not the purpose of holding this Talim, this seminar. The purpose, the vision that we have as a Talim department is how do we get our students into higher level programs, not just the undergrad, higher level programs. We're talking about research, doing masters, doing PhDs. That is what Hazur wants to see from us. Hazur does not want us to see, okay, we do undergrad and then we get a job. That's not our goal for this seminar. And that's why I think IB aligns with that goal.
Perfect. Another question is, will these slides be available?
Yes, I have posted a link there and I want to post it right now one more time. Feel free to copy that, make a copy of it, and yeah.
Jazakallah.
Oh, yes, and Dr. Saab has said that he will put this slide on the website as well, so for all the parents who are not able to access this link. Jazakallah, Dr. Saab.
Perfect. Jazakallah Bashar Saab. I'm going through the questions that have been asked, and I think that we covered essentially all these themes. Now we're just getting kind of repetitions of things we've already discussed. I'd like to ask our organizers, Dr. Tasif Khan Saab and Dr. Mizatari Ahmed Saab, whether or not we'd like to continue for a couple of minutes or what's the best way to proceed. Parents are still welcome to ask as many questions as they can. We'll be happy to help. Okay. So I think given the interest of time, and I think, thankfully we covered the big bulk of the themes, we'll conclude this session. So, Jazakallah to Basharat Saab, Faraz Saab as well for giving us their time and their expertise and their perspective. Again, to our students and our parents, this is a recorded session. Everything will be available to you on I believe, the link that was sent below in the chat. There are many more programs to come in the future. We will be discussing, all aspects of the educational process, whether that's admissions, specific careers, different pathways. So more to come, and inshallah the Talim team will be in close contact with our attendees today and promote these events in the future. If anybody has any questions, they can always reach out to the organizers, and we'll be more than happy to assess and help anybody out. So Jazakallah Basharat Saab and Faraz Bhai again. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.